Okay, and we are live. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Olivia Rondo. Today we are talking about a very interesting topic that we kind of touched on last week when Elaine was on my channel, and I have a very special guest here today who I followed on Twitter for a couple months or so. I'm here with Reed Coverdale. Reed, why don't you introduce yourself, tell people about your channel, your ideology, and I'm going to put up your Twitter and your channel right there.
Sure. Well, my name is Reed Coverdale. I'm from New Hampshire originally. I've been in the libertarian movement for about 7 years now. I first really joined it in 2014 when Rand Paul was filibustering John Brennan's nomination. That really caught my attention and started listening to what he was saying about Syria and how we shouldn't be arming the moderate rebels against Assad. And he's kind of the guy who brought me in. I'd been a senior in high school when Ron Paul ran in 2012, and he had kind of woken me up a little bit, but he didn't really bring me in. It was really Rand Paul. And then, so I was way interested in his campaign. And then that didn't go anywhere. And then I got into Gary Johnson's campaign. I didn't actually actively support either of them through working for them, but I was just like, I was excited about them and telling everyone to vote for them and everything. And then 2016 just didn't go well. We ended up with Trump. So I actually, I kept paying attention to what was going on, but I sort of dropped out of presidential politics because I figured, in 4 years we were going to have Trump running again, and it was probably going to be another 8 years till we had someone who could take a run at the presidency in the Republican Party. And that was kind of what I was thinking was the only way that we were going to get anywhere. But then actually I did end up supporting Tulsi Gabbard in 2020 because she was pretty good on a lot of issues. Definitely had some disagreements, but I was willing to get past them. So I worked on her campaign actually for about 6 months. And man, that was just a disaster. Like just how horrible the Democrats were to her. They just hated her. They were just defaming her at every turn. And it was just disgusting, like what they did to her. So it actually made me come to a realization that the two-party system, even though they're more viable parties to win elections, they don't represent anything we want. Because I'd seen what happened to Rand Paul. And, then I saw what happened to Tulsi Gabbard. With Rand Paul, they didn't really demonize him. They just made him into a joke and just kind of steamrolled him. And with her, they made her out to be a traitor and a devil.
A Russian asset and all that type of shit. So
terrible. So then I was like, okay, I guess it's the Libertarian Party or bust. So I actually joined the Libertarian Party last summer. And that's when I started my YouTube channel. And I had a bunch of congressional candidates who were running as libertarians from all over the country, and state house races and congressional and Senate races. And then I just started talking about libertarian philosophy because the big thing that motivated me to get into doing the show was actually all the corporate bailouts that we had. The CARES Act was the first one we had about a year ago. And that just drove me insane that people weren't freaking out about that. And I realized that a lot of people didn't realize libertarians were not Republicans on economics. We're so different. We don't just support, the profits of capitalism. We support the losses of capitalism too. If you're a bad business or if you're irresponsible, you have to take the dips just like everybody else. You don't get a bailout and a crutch from the government. Like, you've got to deal with your own irresponsibility. And that wasn't what was happening. So that's actually why the name of my show is The Naturalist Capitalist. The naturalist part actually touches on the religious part, as you saw in that video the other day. Like, I don't really believe in anything supernatural, but it's also, capitalism is like the most natural form of economics that we can have. It's the most live and let live ideology. There's no force applied to it. It's just people in consensual transactions with each other. And it basically follows the laws of nature. So that's what my show is really about, just talking about libertarian philosophy. And over the last couple months, I've just been having a lot of interesting guests. Like, I've had Larry Sharp, Spike Cohen, Dave Smith, Scott Horton, Pete Quinones, just people who dedicate their lives to spreading the libertarian message. I've just been collaborating with them. And we're just I think we're just trying to figure out what we're doing in the future now, because the Libertarian Party has been a joke for as long as I've been a part of it. So we're trying to figure out, what do we do going forward? What's the best way to get our message across? And so that's the journey I'm on now. And that's what I've been doing.
First of all, that's very commendable that you worked on those campaigns or involved in those campaigns. I'm a big fan of Tulsi as a person. And the thing is, like, my political disagreements with her, one of my biggest issues is gun control. I don't like her assault weapons ban. I don't have to rag on you about that, because I'm sure you've heard it like a million fucking times.
Oh, yeah.
But I want you to explain to me, how do you reconcile that?
So actually, guns, that's funny that you bring that up, because that was what I fought with her all the time, because I actually know her personally now, because she was in New Hampshire. So she spent like 98% of her time there. So, you know, she was there from like December till February almost every day. And I quit my job in December before I moved out to Utah in March. So I was able to just help out with the campaign a lot. And I actually compiled a bunch of research for her on guns, about how assault weapons are like 3% of the shootings that happen in the United States. I gave her all these stats on all these different states with different gun laws, and the ones with more gun laws actually tended to have more homicides, and then how the statistics on gun violence were kind of skewed, because they would throw suicides in with homicides, and they'd call it all gun violence. It's like, well, if you're killing yourself, is that really gun violence? You know, that seems like a little bit.
You're not really going to stop someone from killing themselves from taking away guns either.
So I was a huge thorn in her side on that issue. But this is what it came down to. Like, if she was running for queen and she was able to institute everything she wanted to do, then yeah, I would probably not have supported her. But I realized, okay, she's running for president. First of all, there's no way in hell she can win. So given the options, you know, I hate Trump and the rest of the Democrats are absolutely terrible. I basically just want to get this message as far as I can, this anti-war, anti-corruption, you know, anti-corporate, anti-police state message as far as I can get it. And if she were to somehow win, she doesn't have control over the areas that I disagree with her on. So I disagreed with her on guns, healthcare, you know, most of her economic policies, but she can't really do that much, especially since if you listen to her, she was really committed to following the rule of law and the process of government. If she kept her word, she was way against executive orders, and she thought the presidency had way too much power. She wanted to return the power to the Congress. So if she actually followed through with what she said, you know, I wouldn't have to ever worry about an assault weapons ban getting to her desk. You know, like, I don't know. That's and I also, like, I wasn't so sure that Trump would veto an assault weapons ban in his second term. I mean, he kind of scared me with all this talk about red flag law.
I wasn't sure either. That's why I keep saying, people are like, Trump 2024. I will say I voted for him in 2020. I'm not going to vote if he runs in 2024. I just thought, like, you know, for lack of a better term, I don't like to sound cliche, lesser of two evils, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to fucking explain myself anymore. I already have. But the fucking bump stock bans, the fact that half the Republicans seem to be very, very friendly with red flag laws. And before we got on live, I was kind of ranting about Dan Crenshaw a little bit because my video on him got demonetized. And I'm pretty sure it's because I mentioned Israel. But in that video also, I touched on his immense support for red flag laws. And then it was like 2 days ago, that was the 1 year anniversary of Duncan Lemp's murder by the state. And it was essentially because of red flag laws. People tipped the police off because he was a 3%er and had fucking assault weapons. So that's bullshit. So I'm not going to vote for Trump again. Yeah. But which of Tulsi's areas that you agreed with her on, would she actually, you know, make some moves in, if not economics, if not healthcare, if not the Second Amendment?
So, like, are you asking what I agreed with her on, first of all?
That you thought she actually had the power to do.
So the only thing that I figured she'd have the power to do is, like, not reauthorize the Patriot Act and stuff like that. You know, like she could put roadblocks in the police state surveillance bullshit that's happening, and then she'd have a lot of power over foreign policy. And that was where I agreed with her a lot, you know, on foreign policy. She wanted to bring the troops home. She did support the war on terror, which I don't, and I like that kind of sucks. Like I think foreign policy would be better because she doesn't want to arm terrorists like everyone else does, which is great, but she still wants to blow them up. And I don't think, you know, that really, I think if we left that, the people living in those countries would probably take care of the terrorists because they hate them. It's not like they like ISIS or Al Qaeda over there, you know, and if we weren't arming them constantly, they'd kind of run out of resources. Like the only reason they've become the force they are is because of us. Like it's the only reason. Yeah. But I agreed with her on most foreign policy. And then, you know, I agreed with her on social issues, you know, like ending the war on drugs, criminal justice reform, demilitarizing the police, you know, and then even like if she wanted to free Assange, she could do that herself. She wanted to pardon.
That was what I found very interesting because everyone, even I was like a little bit hopeful that Trump would do it. I didn't think he would. Like in the last month, I was like, he's not going to fucking do it. But of course, there's that little like ping of hope, and he didn't fucking do it. So I'm like, okay, we all thought he was like not part of the establishment and blah, blah. I mean, not saying we all thought that, but he was kind of like marketed as somebody who's like a political outsider and blah, 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 blah. But if he wasn't bought and paid for, then he would have fucking pardoned Assange, would have pardoned Snowden. So yeah. But you, in your introduction, you made this comment that you were kind of looking towards the future of libertarianism. Like, where are we going? LP versus GOP, blah, 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 blah. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I don't think the Republicans really are as friendly toward libertarianism as a lot of people like to think. And I even think they're not much better than the Democrats. I mean, because they, you know, Republicans, to me, they're very comfortable with the thought of as long as you're not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about. You know, so when that comes to
that comment when I posted about Duncan Lemp yesterday, somebody was like, well, he was a criminal. So like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah. I think that
I'm nothing. I have like nothing to say to them. I'm nothing. There's no argument I can make that would convince people who are that much of a fucking bootlicker to be like, okay, the government is the one that makes the laws, so that makes you the criminal. They can make anyone a criminal. They can make you a criminal. They can make me a criminal. Right. It's kind of bullshit. Sorry, I didn't mean to like go on a tangent. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I mean, I completely agree, and that's very pervasive throughout the Republican base. You said you watched my video with Eric Brakey. He did a debate with Dave Smith, and it kept going back to Trump. Like they kept talking about Trump, and I was like, okay, that's not what Eric's talking about. He's talking about like the Republican Party as a whole, not just whoever the president is. And in my video, I was really trying to drive home that I think the Republican voters, like the Republican base as a whole around the country, are not liberty minded. They're just not. Like they might agree with us in, you know, at least rhetorically on guns, but then like you said, they're kind of happy with practice. Yeah, but then like if you get into like NSA spying, the only reason they got upset about it recently was because they spied on Trump. You know, it's all completely subjective. Like they don't care about it in general. Like if Trump, until Trump got spied on, they didn't care at all. You know, so it's all about like if it happens to them, then they care. But if you're doing anything that they don't deem acceptable, then you should be subject to the full prosecution of the law. That's just kind of how they think. And I grew up as a Republican. I grew up with Republicans. Most of my friends are Republicans. So I don't really think I'm straw manning them. Like I know these people, they're the ones I know the best.
Absolutely.
And, you know, it's just like this idea that they're all Ron Paul in hiding and we just need to bring their inner Ron Paul out. I'm like, Ron Paul wanted to legalize heroin. And, you know, he wanted to.
No, I don't see Republicans doing that anytime soon. However, I do agree with your assessment on the Republican voter base for the most part, but I think something has changed recently. And it started, I think, with COVID, the quarantine, and kind of crescendoed with the January 26th Capitol insurrection bullshit. I don't think they're as in love with the police anymore. I know a lot of Republicans who went from like literally having the thin blue line fucking bumper stickers and like all like blue lives matter, rah, rah, rah. And now they're like, I'm a fucking 3%er, like fuck the cops. They killed Ashley Babbitt, blah, 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 blah. However, they got to that conclusion that the cops are no longer good. I'm like, finally, you guys are fucking seeing this shit. Like, I don't know how many black people had to die before, no offense, but it's like very telling to me that it was basically like COVID, police enforcing mask mandates, and then the shooting of Ashley Babbitt to get people to wake the fuck up. I do think sometimes that is like maybe subconsciously like racially motivated, but however you got to that conclusion, it's like finally like let's open the door for some other like liberty ideas. So I don't know. I think people are starting to wake up. However, they got there.
I would like to agree, but I've just seen the stage change so many times, and it seems so subjective. Like, it doesn't seem to be an objective change in opinion. It just really matters like who's got power at what time, and then suddenly everything's okay again. Like, I remember, like people say Republicans are sort of anti-war now. I don't think they are. I mean, and when I really saw that was not true was when Trump looked like he was going to war with Iran about a year ago after he airstriked Soleimani. Like, all the Republicans I knew were beating the war drum super hard, even though like 2 months earlier they'd been saying, yeah, we agree with Trump. These endless wars are dumb. Let's get out of there. And then like as soon as the narrative changes a little bit, their minds all change too. I think there's some people, because I do have some friends who have actually, they've been contacting me and they're like, hey, I want to hear about this libertarian stuff because you guys are the only ones who seem consistent at all. You're like always saying the same thing all the time. So there are some people who I think are waking up, but I think most are just mad that the cops didn't support Trump. And as soon as, the cops start supporting Trump again, they're just they're going to like the cops again. I don't think it really has been a transformational thought process. And Americans are just so shallow. I mean, they really are. Like they're so, when Obama was running in 2008, wars were bad for the Democrats. And as soon as he takes power, wars are fine again. And then, like the Republicans were against spending once Obama was in office. And then once Trump gets in there, spending's great. And so, I mean, it's just like none of these things actually change.
I mean, I keep tweeting. I'm like, the national debt, federal spending, and no one gives a fuck. I swear to God, no one gives a fuck. I mean, of course, as soon as Biden was inaugurated, people gave a fuck again, but nobody gave a fuck for like 4 years. So that really pissed me off. And that was like one of the things that kind of helped my evolution from becoming like, I don't know. I still consider myself like a mixture of conservative or libertarian, but definitely further down like the libertarian to fucking anarchist pipeline.
Oh, yeah.
So explain that to me. Or so do you consider yourself an anarchist now? Or I didn't get the chance to watch it. I saw you had a YouTube thumbnail or some shit that was like, I'm an anarchist, let me explain, but I didn't get the chance to watch it. So explain it to me real quick.
Yeah, so I've newly accepted that I am an anarchist. So what that means is I'm not like extremely solid in that belief. It's been a new phase that I'm crossing into, and I'm doing a lot of reading right now. I'm reading Lysander Spooner, Rothbard. I'm listening to Larkin Rose, a bunch of just people who talk about it. And it's just making more sense to me. So I'm at the point where I don't have all the solutions yet, but I just realized that government is a false solution. It's just dumb. Like the idea that 51% of the people decide something, so that must make it okay. Just that concept has just proven to be false, because if you look through history, when 51% of people thought slavery was fine, did that mean it was okay? Or if 51% of the Germans thought it was fine to murder the Jews, does that make it okay? Like what's this concept of like, oh, most people want to do this, so that's fine. That has fallen apart. Like that obviously doesn't make sense. And then the idea that someone has a badge or they voted in a fancy building to say, to write these words on a piece of paper or whatever, that somehow makes it sound and good, has just fallen apart. So I'm really believing in the idea of preaching ideas that make sense, that people without the force of government can realize, oh yeah, that'll work if we decide to live that way, if we decide to not aggress against each other, if we decide to live and let live, if we decide to respect each other. I don't think that government force is the way to keep people in line, because the government is tyrannical. Like, I mean, we were just talking about, like, with the cops, like they're sanctioned to do pretty much whatever they want because they have the power of the law behind them. Like, the funny thing is, all the worries about anarchy is that it could devolve back into something we already have right now. Like, the whole worry is, oh, some sort of government's going to arise or something like government will form. And it's like, okay, well, if that's the biggest worry, we already have that right now. Like, we're already run by warlords. I mean, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, they're warlords, like, it's just at a very centralized level. If we'd be worried about, like, people dying, think about how many people the United States kills every year, how much terrorism we export around the world, all the theft and extortion that takes place through the U.S. government. So, like, the whole fear of embracing anarchy and realizing, like, wow, the government is illegitimate. It's just because these people have badges and they voted in these fancy buildings and wrote this stuff down on some pieces of paper, that somehow gives them sanctity over our lives. Like, that's just bullshit. And if people start realizing that and realizing, wow, the only way society is going to get better is if we all start taking care of each other and being respectful and taking care of ourselves, then we can actually move forward, instead of, like, looking to, this whole idea, like, oh, we just got to elect somebody better next time, as if that's a permanent fix. Like, you get somebody better in office who's going to make better decisions. What about after that person leaves office and then you have someone else who can just change it back to the way it used to be? Or, so that's where I am right now. Like, I've given up on the idea of government being a solution. I don't have all the answers, but I'm listening, reading a lot of philosophers, and their ideas are making a lot of sense to me. So that's the pipeline I'm on. So I've gone from conservative to libertarian. I call myself, like, a libertarian anarchist. I've actually called myself a pragmatic anarchist. So I don't think we can just, like, go to anarchy tomorrow. Like, I don't think we'll ever get to anarchy. I mean, realistically,
that was literally gonna be my next question. My next question was gonna be like, okay, is that achievable? And also, I just wanted to comment on your, like, philosophy that, like, we just need to learn how to take care of each other and love each other, blah blah blah. I don't think that's possible. I think humans are really bad and shitty. I mean, I want to ask you, like, does anarchy exist on Earth right now? Like, are there places in, like, a third world country where it's just, like, straight lawlessness, and how is that working out? And I'm not saying that to, like, say I know what's going on, because I really don't. I don't know if there's, like, pure anarchy somewhere on Earth, but I just want your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I don't believe in utopia. Like, I don't think we can ever have a society that people just take care of each other and everything's fine. I just think that to fool ourselves into thinking that government gives us that is what's false. Like, we don't have that now. Like, we have a government and people don't take care of each other. And on top of that, you have this massive police state and this massive military industrial complex, all this state-sanctioned murder that happens all the time. So the idea that the government is somehow preventing bad things from happening just isn't true. So it's a false idea to think that if we got rid of government, all our problems would go away and everyone would be singing Kumbaya and getting along. I don't think that. I think it would be more like the Native Americans before we showed up. A lot of people think that was utopia. It definitely wasn't. Like, the Indian tribes were killing each other. They were having wars all the time, but nothing at the scale that was happening in Europe, right? Like, the wars that we were waging in Europe with big centralized governments, or like anything that's happened since then with all these big governments. Like, you wouldn't have genocides without government, I don't think. Like, I don't think you'd see, I don't think the Holocaust would have happened.
I definitely agree. I mean, genocide is like in my opinion, it's like impossible to commit if you don't have, like, a power that is either of or above, like, what government is now. I mean, like you brought up, like, the Holocaust, or, like, when I think of, like, one of the worst genocides in history, which was actually in Africa, which sometimes, according to different historians, is, like, estimated at or above the same levels as the Jewish Holocaust. It was committed by King Leopold, and it's like, I feel like it doesn't matter what form of government, a monarchy, theocracy, democracy. I don't know. I don't trust him with that much power. And me and Elaine were kind of talking about this last week, because here's where I differ from a lot of conservatives and Republicans who want the government to have a lot of power. And you actually touched on this, I think in your conversation. I watched a lot of your shit, so I want to say it was in episode 80 when you were talking with David Fight, but you said that if we just want the government to be in charge for like the most important things, but we see how ineffective they are with managing like smaller things, then why the fuck would we want them to be in charge of like the death penalty and shit? And like that's what I was kind of talking about with Elaine last week. Like if we can't trust the government, like one of my tamer libertarian ideals is just like, yeah, the government shouldn't like force people to get a business license. It's like the government should be involved in that, but that's pretty small. That's just like bureaucracy. But then when it gets bigger, it's like, I don't think the government should have the fucking power to shoot people that are breaking the law or like kill people or like put people. Then like that kind of, when you said that, I was like, huh, that's kind of what I thought this whole time, but I couldn't like verbalize it or put it into words. So then I was like, am I being an anarchist right now? And I was like, I have to reel this back in. Like I have to stop watching this dude's channel. I just have to talk to him. Like I'm like not ready to become an anarchist. Like there's still some things I think that government could be useful in, but heavily decentralized. And I like how you said, you referenced like Native American tribes. Like I'm not saying we should go back to like tribal times, but like just more decentralized than even the colonies were. Like just crazy different from what we have now. But back to this is completely different, but you said something that kind of made me laugh, because you said the LP was like really like silly, like unserious, like blah 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 blah. How do you fix that? What's going on there? Because I'm a registered independent. I don't know what the fuck is going on with y'all. All I see on Twitter every day is like this caucus versus this caucus and blah 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 blah. Like I don't know what the fuck's going on. So like explain that.
Yeah, so like Gary Johnson was when I first found out about the Libertarian Party, and he was just an idiot. Like, let's be honest. I mean, he had
What's
like,
Aleppo?
Yeah, and that wasn't the only thing. Like he did a ton of shit that was just stupid.
Yeah, that was just like the funniest thing I thought.
Yeah. And he really blew an opportunity, because they had like 12% in the polls in the beginning of the summer in 2016, and then it got all the way down to like 3% by the time everyone voted. And that's on them, because they had a ton of media coverage. I mean, they were on Fox News, they were on CNN. They had 2 CNN town halls, I think. Which, we didn't have any of that this last time around. And, I have my criticisms of Jo Jorgensen, but she was way better than Gary Johnson. Like,
yeah. Elaine brought up that there was a complete media blackout on her, and I agree.
Well, there was, I mean, she and Spike Cohen were both way better than Bill Weld or Gary Johnson. And if they had gotten the same amount of media coverage, I'm sure they would have done way better than they did.
Absolutely.
But it's the infighting that you see is part of the thing that I'm so pissed off about, because I think it's good to criticize where we've been dumb and where we've made mistakes and say we should do things better. But people just straight up demonize dissent or criticism as though you're a traitor. Like if you think, hey, we got 1.2% this last time and that's bad, we must have done something wrong, then you're a Republican or you're a Democrat, or, like people just, they cast you out. But then also some people are just like so vicious and vitriolic, and they're just like, we need to do this our way or the highway, and we're going to burn it down. And anyone else who has any other ideas than us is an idiot, and get out of the way, we're coming in. And so you and Elaine actually talked about it last time a bit, but the Liberty Unity thing, that was actually, I started that in January.
Oh yeah, I forgot to ask you about that. What the fuck is that?
Yeah, so it started out just as an idea, January 1st, 2021. There was just so much stupid infighting going on. So I made a post on Twitter where I tagged a bunch of people. I tagged like 20 people from the leadership of the libertarian movement. And I basically said, hey guys, can we just fucking get along? Because you looked at the Republicans, they were, imploding and losing their shit because Trump lost. And the Democrats, are eating each other alive. The left was, at least like the far left part of the Democratic Party. They were just like having this crazy infighting. I was like, hey, this is a perfect opportunity for us to capitalize on all this hysteria, but we're busy, ripping each other apart. So that tweet actually got a bunch of conversations going between people in the leadership of the more pragmatic and the more anarcho-capitalist parts of the movement, and it actually started bringing people together. And then I became friends with a lot of people up near the top of the Mises Caucus movement, which is the more anarcho-capitalist movement. And I was able to get a bunch of different people on my show to talk about this, and people started realizing the bigger picture and realizing that we're on the same team, even if we don't agree on 100% of the issues. And so we've actually turned it into something. We've turned it into the Unity Coalition, and our whole purpose is just to try to get people to work together on the big ticket issues. So if you're not an open borders person, or if you're not a legalized machine guns person, but you believe in the core concepts of liberty and self-ownership and live and let live and ending the wars and decentralization, like, we want you on board. And, even if there's just one issue you agree with us on that you're willing to work with us on, like, we'll reach out to you and work with you on that one issue. So it's that idea of like people seeing the bigger picture and realizing who's the real enemy. And it's been pretty effective. Like, we've gotten a lot of good conversations started, and we've actually seen the tone change in a lot of people. Like, for the most part, a lot of the hysteria is down lower now than it used to be. Like, it used to be leadership just like ripping each other's throats out, but now it's actually like mostly kind of irrelevant people doing it. There are a couple people who are mainstream who are still doing it. I'm not going to name any names, but they need to kind of grow up.
That would be so fun, though. That would be so fun if we name names. I love naming names. Okay, sorry, go ahead. I'm just petty.
No, but that's pretty much it. Like, that's the libertarian. I'm trying to remember, what was your original question? What the Libertarian Party's got to do to be serious, or
like, yeah, basically, like, why is it unserious, and how do you move forward from that? Because you don't see it in the Republican Party, but you're part of the LP. You want it to succeed, but it's like, how do we get past that? And I think that Liberty Unity is definitely a big part of the answer to that. But I still find some parts of the LP to be very like unpalatable to the general population. Like the convention where Gary Johnson's like, yes, I support driver's licenses. Everyone's like, boo, fuck you, Gary Johnson. It's like, God damn, I thought that was like a normal opinion to have. Like, I don't think anyone's going to elect libertarians if they're like, we are ripping down the government right here, right now. No more driver's licenses. Like, come on. Like, how that's just silly. That is just silly. How do you guys progress from that?
Yeah, so you got to balance it, because you can't be boring. We don't want to just be like washed over Republicans or washed over Democrats.
Yeah,
like,
you definitely want to be revolutionary, just not fucking crazy.
So what you got to do is you got to choose the issues that Americans agree with you on that have a lot of public support. So like ending the wars, that's something that most Americans support, and you can be freaking radical on that. Like, you can be like, we're bringing all the troops home. We're going to cut the military budget. And you can run that really hard without scaring a ton of people. And then you can be like, these lockdowns have got to end. They're destroying people's lives. You can do that with like mass incarceration. You can be like, look, we imprison more than any other country in the world. It's mostly non-violent drug offenders. Corporate bailouts. Like, I don't know anyone who is a fan of bailing out Boeing. I don't think anyone really thinks that's a good idea. So you can find like these central big issues that you can be really radical and really loud about, and you can inspire people to be like, whoa, I want to be a part of this. And that doesn't even mean you don't have to you can be against driver's licenses, but please don't make it like the center of your campaign. Like, leave it, like, don't even talk about it, please. Unless
shut up about it. Please don't mention it at all.
It's such an irrelevant topic. And there are a lot of people who, they do this with borders and welfare too. It's really annoying. Like, there are open borders people and end the welfare state people, and both of them are so obnoxious, because the open borders people, like, they just want to tear open the borders, like rip the fence down and let everyone in. Yeah. And then the welfare people want to just get rid of food stamps and get rid of, grandma's Medicaid, like, tomorrow. It's just like, what are you guys doing? Like, most of America is freaked out when they hear you talking like that. And in my mind, like, even if America was on our side with everything, you got to be measured in how you start dismantling the state. Like, in my mind, you've got to get rid of corporate welfare long before you do anything about food stamps. Like in my mind, if we were deconstructing the corporate economy, you basically get to food stamps by the time that it's not really an issue anymore, by the time that you've freed up the market enough and you have people taking care of each other at a decentralized level that you don't even need them anymore. Like the idea that food stamps is bankrupting us is just ridiculous. It's
no, absolutely not.
So I think, it's about finding the issues that we can run on and inspire people with, and then keeping like the idiots out of the limelight who just scream about stupid, irrelevant stuff that doesn't matter. And then having a measured strategy on how we're going to dismantle things. Because if you just go with a hatchet cutting at the state at any level, if you do it the wrong way, you can actually make things worse. I use the example of repealing Glass-Steagall. They only repealed half of it. They repealed the half that broke the banks up, but they didn't repeal the half that kept the FDIC, which was the government-backed insurance. So now you have banks that aren't broken up anymore, but they have full government backing with insurance. And that kind of it was one of the major things that led to the housing crisis of 2008. So like if you gotta be smart about how you're going to dismantle stuff, because if libertarians get in there and all they get rid of is Medicaid and Social Security and they don't do anything else, in my mind, I'm not even sure they've actually done anything for liberty. You've kind of just made it worse. Like you're just making the top.
You're giving the corporations more power, basically. Elaine said something about that a few days ago, where she said that she is an open borders libertarian, but she would support ending the welfare state gradually and then opening the borders gradually, because like a lot of Republicans' concerns is all these immigrants are coming here, getting on welfare or stealing our jobs, blah, 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 blah. But that wouldn't be an issue at all if the welfare state was ended. And there's definitely merit to that argument. I thought I'm still not an open borders libertarian, but I think it's interesting how your kind of like liberty unity movement would accept people who maybe have a couple ideas that are not like the LP party platform. Because I think it was the Texas State Libertarian Party had posted the other day that immigration is a human right. And I was like, I disagree, but I'm going to talk with a couple libertarians this week and like, let's like, let's hash it out. Can I? And that was like no shade to them, because they're like really nice to me. Like, they like reposted my live stream with Elaine and everything. But a lot of people were like coming at me. They were like, no, you cannot. Like, we don't want you here. Like, somebody called me a racist. I was like, okay, I'm not. I'm not a racist. I don't hate brown people, if you guys cannot tell. But yeah, I'm just not a fan of all. I don't know if it's infighting, because it's people who don't even consider me like a libertarian at all, or people who are just like very quick to call anyone who is a little bit more right of center on the social issues a bigot or just not a libertarian, period. And I saw that with the Mises Caucus I guess it was like 2 weeks ago, but everyone's calling them racist, everyone's calling them transphobic. And I was asking so many questions and no one wanted to give me a fucking straight answer. I'm like, what did they do that was racist? Like, what do they do? I don't want to be associated with racists. Like, just tell me what they did. Yeah. And somebody finally got to the bottom of it. Apparently they had said that out of two choices, a president who did not want their kid to date a minority but would end all wars in the Middle East, or B, an anti-racist president who is a warmonger, and they picked the first president that's like kind of racist but would spare thousands of lives, and they were getting called racist for that. And I was like, I agree with that. Like, not that Joe Jorgensen's a racist, but like if she was like, yeah, I don't want my daughter to date a black guy, but she like ended the entire military industrial complex, I'd be like, okay, like I don't like it, but I would just deal with it. I mean, it's like thousands and thousands of lives. But that was the reason they were being called a racist caucus. And I was like, okay, like this is very unserious. And it was like a large faction of like more like lefty libertarians doing that. And since you don't want to name names, fine, I won't name any names. But I was just like, I was just like blown away. I was like, what, like I don't know. I don't want to be like that, like one of the good ones, or like that one like Uncle Tom that like agrees with the racist people, but like I'm black. I don't care. I wouldn't really give a fuck if somebody didn't want their kid to date a minority, but like ended the wars. Like I really wouldn't give a fuck. So
yes, that question.
Is this liberty? Is this? Oh, go ahead.
that question actually wasn't to the Mises caucus. It was actually to a guy from the Prague caucus, and they asked him if someone were, it was the same question that you just posed. And
did the Mises caucus answer it, or it was just
this guy answered he'd rather have an anti-racist president who kept the wars going than someone.
Okay, yes, I did see that, and then he replied to me and was like, yeah, because I was asking everybody in the replies, and I was like, what did they do? Because he was the main one that was like, they're all racist, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And he replied to me, it was like, well, they said that they would prefer a president that didn't date a minority or didn't want their kid to date a minority. I was like, that's not the whole fucking story.
Yeah,
like,
and
it was just
they asked him. He didn't ask them. They put the
okay.
him, and he answered.
So they're the racist ones. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And I'm friends with a lot of those guys. Like I'm friends with Dave Smith and Scott Horton and Pete Quinones, and they're not racist. It's just ridiculous. I think what kind of really makes me disgusted about that is working on Tulsi's campaign, and she got called a racist because David Duke said something nice about her. Like he said, I like her America First policy. So she's a racist because David Duke said something nice about her. And it's like, she's half Polynesian, like how is she a white supremacist? It's ridiculous.
Richard Spencer fucking endorsed Joe Biden, but no one's fucking talking about that shit. Oh my god!
It's all the racist
He's a character.
Woke bullshit is completely subjective. It's only used against the people you don't like. There's no consistency to it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Like we were talking about Israel before we did. I don't want to get your. Hopefully, I don't get your video demonetized or whatever.
I don't give a fuck. I make like 70 cents on these. Go ahead. Go ahead.
But I've had a lot of Israel critics on my show, and I've had I call those people that you're referring to. I call them lolberts. That's kind of what everyone calls them. They're like the woke.
Okay, but I've been called it before, and I don't understand why. I don't feel like I'm that liberal. I really don't.
Well, I've been called a lolbert too because I don't like Trump. So I mean, it's a dumb insult for the most part, but that's kind of who it's supposed to be about. It's about like the left, the culturally left, like woke libertarian. That's kind of what a lolbert is. But they were freaking out at me for having like Ryan Dawson on my show or Pete Quinones or Carrie Wedler, like these people who are, Carrie Wedler's Jewish and she's skeptical of the Israeli government. She's made a bunch of videos and she gets called an anti-Semite. Ryan Dawson gets called an anti-Semite all the time. So does Pete Quinones. And like, they were freaking out at me. Like, how could you have these Jew haters on your show? And I'm like, I mean, it's just so dumb. There's no consistency to it. And it's weaponized. Like it's used to shut down.
It's a foreign nation. Why are we sucking their dick so much? And then when you dive a little bit into theology, you kind of understand why the Christian right is so in love with that, and why all the evangelicals are like, it's fucking prophecy for them. It's prophecy.
Oh, yeah.
It's not geopolitical at all. Which in itself is kind of anti-Semitic. I'm like, you guys don't really care about Jewish people. It's like you literally just think Jesus is going to come back if all the Jews go back to Israel. So it's like, I don't know. It's kind of fucking backwards. And like I follow a lot of Jewish people who happen to be Zionists, and some of them post things like, "Oh, if you're anti-Zionist, you're anti-Semitic," blah 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 blah. I get that comment a lot, and I don't even think I've ever said I'm anti-Zionist. I'm just not a Zionist. I don't know if that makes me an anti-Zionist. I really I'm not really invested in the issue that much. I only become invested in the issue when the issue becomes invested in the United States. Like it's really not my concern, really not my business. I'm not an evangelical, so I don't necessarily believe that all the European Jews going back to Israel is going to make Jesus come back. Like, what am I supposed to say? Like, that's the reason. I feel like that's the reason why all the Trump supporters really supported Israel so much, and that's why you still see like all these like MAGA like bot profiles with like the United States flag, like a little heart, like the Israel flag. I'm like, you guys aren't fucking Jewish. Like you're not Jewish and you're not from Israel. Like I know why you have that there. It's really stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, I don't mean to go on a rant. And I know somebody's gonna take that shit out of context and be like, Olivia's anti-Semite, but I'm not.
I mean, you've seen my videos on how easily you could take things out of context and know. Welcome to the club.
Yeah, you were like so mad I watched your video with David Fight, and I was like, that was like the fun. It was, first of all, it was very intriguing, but it was also very funny. And I was like, I promise, I'm not gonna take it out of context. I literally sat there. I was drinking a little bit, so I don't remember everything that was said, but I sat there, watched all 2 hours of it, so I'm not gonna take shit out of context.
Yeah, well, I wasn't mad. I was just like shocked and like basically impressed. I was like, wow, you sat through that whole 2 hours.
I have the attention span to sit there for 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
It helped that I was drinking.
Probably,
it helped
yeah.
a little bit.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I kind of like rated the hotel minibar just a tad bit. Why the fuck aren't people asking questions? What is wrong with y'all? They're just sitting in awe of your genius, probably, because usually I get a lot of questions. I think they're just learning from you. Can you guys like say something if you're there? I see people in here. Anyways, so is liberty unity, is that something that a lot of the people you tagged and, you know, a lot of people you follow subscribe to? Because like we were just talking about, there's been a lot of infighting lately between the caucuses and all that kind of shit. Like, is it working? Are people listening to it? Or are there people like, you know, still hating on y'all?
It is working. I think there are some irrelevant people who don't want to see it happen. And then there is one relevant person in the party, although he's not really as relevant as he used to be. He's definitely against it, but he can go fuck himself. He's irrelevant, so who cares?
Wait, do I know who you're talking about? I think I do.
Probably. You can ask me. I just don't want to.
Okay. I literally love drama. I don't know. I love talking shit. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
But yeah, most people are moving beyond it, and I think they're seeing the bigger picture. And the funny thing is, like, a lot of the leftists I know who have become libertarians, they actually like the Mises Caucus more than like the Pragmatic Caucus, because they just like the idea of someone being bold and saying what they think, and it actually won them over. Like, I don't know too many people who have been inspired by like a soft, like pragmatic message. It's mostly by people who have something bold to say. I mean, that's how, you know, I think Rand Paul kind of is pretty milquetoast nowadays, but back in 2014, like, he was pretty good. He was a lot like his dad, and he's kind of what got me, you know, that filibuster he did against John Brennan for 14 hours, actually doing the filibuster the way you're supposed to, staying on topic. And, you know, like that caught my attention. It wasn't some, you know, person saying libertarian platitudes or something. It was the boldness that caught my attention. So, you know, I think people are moving on beyond it by and large. And I think what people have to do is just ignore the idiots, ignore the naysayers, ignore the people who are trying to detract from it, because that's all they're there for. They're just there for causing chaos and wreaking havoc and maintaining their status as a big fish in a small pond. They don't want to become normal sized fish in a big pond. So, you know, I think it'll work in the long run. And, it's kind of my only hope. Like, I'm done with the Republicans and the Democrats. My little time over there, I was like, yeah, no way. So it's kind of the only thing I'm interested in.
Did Tulsi listen to you at all when you were talking about your issues with gun control?
Yeah, she did. So I gave her I think I gave her 3 packages that I put together about guns. The first one was just about the assault weapons ban. And then the second one was about like all of her gun. She actually wasn't as bad as everyone else. I don't know if you looked. I mean, everyone else was so much worse. Like, Bernie is probably the second least horrible, but he was way worse than her. So I gave her something on just the assault weapons ban. Then I gave her something on all the gun legislation she'd ever supported. And then the third one was just about like gun death statistics. And she actually ended up removing the assault weapons ban and the high capacity magazine ban from her website right before.
She did?
Yeah, right before the primary.
I had no idea, because right before we got on, I was like, let me double check and see what her actual like stance on the Second Amendment was. But I didn't look at her website. I looked at like a third party, and it still said assault weapons ban. So I didn't know she actually ended up removing that.
Yeah, so it was a soft move, you know, because she didn't say anything about it. She didn't like come out and say, I renounce this former position or anything like that. She just
would have made things worse, I think.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's too late. Like, you can't do anything at that point. But she removed it, which is a sign that, you know, she listened maybe. So I don't know. Like, if she'd have to like leave the Democrats, which she might do. I mean, they hate her. Like, there's no room for her there. So if she could like leave and start hanging out with better people, that are going to influence her in the right way. I think if she ever did something again, she could be better. But yeah, I don't know. I think she listened, and she changed throughout the campaign. Like when she first jumped in the race, I think she was trying to get like the Bernie supporters because Bernie
for sure
was running, but then he jumped in and kind of sidelined her. And so then she was actually going for like the libertarian support toward the end of the race. Like that was kind of
talking a lot about anti-war shit. That definitely caught my attention for sure. But then again, I still like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe if she did publicly come out and like renounce all the gun control stuff, that definitely would have caught my attention. But then again, would it have been good for her being in the Democrat Party? And Elaine was mentioning this to me a couple of days ago, because I was like, I don't know if Tulsi's gonna actually like, transform into a libertarian like a lot of people seem to think. Like she was on Kennedy last year on Fox, and Kennedy was like, are you gonna drop the socialist bullshit? And Tulsi's like, no. But Elaine made a point. She was like, well, that was a year ago. That was before everything went down. That was before the Democrats threw under the fucking bus and called her Russian acid and all that kind of stuff. And maybe she's, rethunk some of her ideas. But I don't know. Do you think that she has, on the economic issues and stuff?
My opinion on her with economics is that she was economically illiterate, not indoctrinated. So like, I think AOC and Bernie are.
That's very harsh, but okay.
I know, but like AOC and Bernie are indoctrinated. Like they firmly believe like socialist policies, even though they don't vote for them. Like they vote corporate like almost all the time. But the way they talk is very socialist. The way she talks is actually pretty free market, but then she just had these weird programs she wanted to throw in with it, which was really confusing. She talked a lot about the petrodollar and how that was why our foreign policy was so corrupt, because we were protecting the value of the dollar, and that's why we're so friendly with Saudi Arabia. She talked a lot about that. She talked about the debt and how dangerous it was, and she talked about how the bailouts for businesses were bad and how capitalism wasn't bad. It was corporatism that was bad. And then she would like somehow support Medicare for all, even though she said we need to balance the budget.
That's what confused me so much. I wanted to like her so bad, and I like her as a person still, but I wanted to like her as a politician. Not that I like any politicians, but you know what I mean? Like I really wanted to, because I saw her as a political outsider. I don't know. She posted all those really sexy workout videos. I was like, damn, Tulsi, like I was retweeting that shit, but I can't endorse you. I retweeted like all those fucking workout videos, but I can't endorse you.
No, I mean,
it really pissed me off.
That's why I think she's like economically illiterate, because a lot of it just didn't line up. Like it didn't connect the dots. It was just like confusing. But I mean, the reason I don't think she's a libertarian, and the reason I supported her was because of what the options were. Like if Rand Paul had been running, I would have gone with him. Or, if some staunch libertarian were running, it was just like, it was Trump or any of the other Democrats. And so for me, it was super obvious, because I don't agree with Trump on like anything. Like the stuff he's supposed to be good on, he's not even really good on. Like at least she was good on like 2/3 of the issues. And, the economics and the guns were bad, but the social issues and foreign policy was pretty good. Like Trump was just horrible, and then the rest of the Democrats were insane. So it was just like the only option you had. So that was really why I supported her. It's not because, I mean, so many people think that I think she is a strict libertarian, and I've never, ever said that. I mean, you can watch all my videos and go all the way back. You can search all my tweets. Never said that I think she's a libertarian. I've said I would like her to become one, because I think she'd add a lot to the movement. But yeah, she's definitely isn't. Like there are some things that keep her from us, and she'd have to change on them. So
I'm glad you answered that, because when I saw the video I didn't get a chance to watch, that was like on the anarchist, and I knew you had worked on the Tulsi campaign. I was like, how and why? Like it just confused me. But now that you explain it, it makes more sense. And before we wrap up, I want to get into your quote unquote beef with Rand Paul, because I've seen on your timeline, sometimes you criticize him, sometimes you don't. But a lot of libertarians seem to think he's like this great liberty Republican, and I don't know if I consider myself like a fan of Rand Paul, but I think he's better than the vast majority of Republicans. So like, explain what's your beef there?
Yeah, so he's my second favorite Republican, so I don't by any means think he's as bad as Ted Cruz or Mitch McConnell or something. I think he falls far short of what he should be, especially if you compare him to his dad. Like
I was going to ask you, like, is what he should be just his dad, or
that's part of it. But so this is the thing with Rand Paul. He has a really good voting record, right? Like if you look at it, there's only a few things I disagree with him on. And there have been a few key votes that he's made where I'm just like, wow, dude, that was bad.
But your problem isn't with his voting record, though, right?
Not really. Not for the most part. I mean, he did vote for like Lloyd Austin for defense secretary under Biden. Like when he does stuff like that, or when he voted for Mike Pompeo for Secretary of State under Trump, or when he voted for Jeff Sessions for Attorney General, like that type of stuff does grind at me. So he's had a few like big goof up votes that I'm just like, dude, what are you doing? But by and large, like 95% of the time, his voting record is pretty good. So this is what I think about if you're in Congress right now, since Congress is like 95% ghouls who are just going to, vote for the establishment narrative, vote for war, vote for spending, vote for whatever. Your primary role in Congress is actually your platform, not necessarily your voting record. Like if you're like Bernie Sanders and you speak a platform, but then you vote a different way, you're also a piece of shit, because then you're just a hypocrite. Like that's what I think of Bernie. He's a complete hypocrite because he talks all this socialist utopia stuff, but then he votes for corporate bailouts. So fuck him. Like he's a complete sellout. Rand Paul's like the opposite. He votes well, but then the way he talks and the things that he vocally supports are just terrible. Like he was,
like what?
So he's saying like Democrats hate the police and that we need to, fund the police and that we need to back our police officers up more. But then you look at his voting record and he introduced the Justice for Breonna Taylor Act and he introduced the bill to end no-knock raids. So like he's introducing bills to reduce police power. But then his rhetoric is that the police are our best friends and we need to do everything we can to support them. And then he voted against Trump more than any other Republican in the Senate.
I think he's just trying to get elected. I think he just needs a Republican base to get elected.
When he was under Trump, he voted against him more than any other senator did. But he would just constantly go on TV and tell us.
Any other Republican senator, right?
Yeah, any other Republican senator. Like he would tell us constantly, like, you need to vote for Trump. He even said, like, specifically, libertarians need to support Donald Trump on Twitter once. And he did all these videos about how Trump's ending the wars. He's bringing our troops home. Like, he would just straight up lie for Trump. And then he'd go in the Senate and oppose his legislation selling weapons to Saudi Arabia. So it's super weird with Rand. Like, I've got a love-hate relationship with him because I love his principled voting record. But the platform that he has and the fact that he is like the number one libertarian icon in America, like if anyone who doesn't know libertarians thinks of libertarianism, they think of Rand Paul.
For sure.
So they think libertarianism is Trump. That's what libertarianism means, because Rand Paul supports Trump. Rand Paul supports the GOP. Rand Paul supports the police. Rand Paul, no one looks at his voting record. Like the average person just sees him on Fox News or CNN. To them, what Rand represents is backing the GOP, backing Trump, backing the blue. That's what they think of when they hear him. And if they actually looked at his voting record, they'd see that he actually is pretty libertarian, but he's done the movement a disservice through how he presents the message, where his dad, I think, realized that the bigger picture was really, what are you selling? What is the message you're selling? And he ran like very principled presidential campaigns. He would do beautiful speeches on the House floor. He never apologized for George W. Bush at all. He never, because this is what's weird. Like George Bush, Ron Paul might agree with him on like re-legalizing assault weapons or, lower taxes or something. But he would never say like, oh yeah, George Bush is sort of libertarian on some things. He would straight up say like, no, George Bush is the devil. And so is Barack Obama, where Rand is like trying to embrace conservatism in the GOP and Trump and act like.
Why do you think he does that though? If his voting record is so nice, why do you think he does that?
I don't know, because if he's attempting to run again and get that support, he's not doing very well. Because I don't know if you saw the CPAC poll, but Trump. So they did the CPAC
Well,
thing.
I did see Trump Trump had a larger margin than I definitely thought. Then wasn't it like DeSantis and Noam, and then I forgot the rest.
So Rand Paul comes behind Nikki Haley. He has 2%.
Yeah.
She has 3%.
That's
So
not good because I'm on Twitter talking about how I would support Rand for 2024 all the time too.
yeah, so I mean, he's not gaining traction with the Republicans. Like, they don't like him any more than they used to. And I don't think they respect him the way, because some people voted for Ron Paul, even though they didn't agree with him on like legalizing heroin, but they respected him because they're like, wow, this guy means what he says. He's a straight shooter and he's consistent. Like, Rand Paul is kind of a weasel when it comes to his rhetoric. He just is. So people don't trust him. People think he's disingenuous, and it sucks. And it's really like, it's hard for me to watch because he's the guy who brought me into the movement. And he used to be a lot more like his dad, and just to see like what he's turned into hurts. It's like Bernie supporters who hate Bernie now, because Bernie was the same thing in their mind. Like, he used to be sort of consistent. Then he was shilling for Hillary, and now he's been shilling for the DNC. And so they're like, fuck you, that.
Yeah. Well, like you said, Bernie has a corporatist voting record and Rand Paul for the most part doesn't. So it's like, can you at least recognize that maybe it's just a bad strategy? I mean, if his voting record is actually good, the policy he's affecting is actually good, but his strategy is so shitty and it's making him lose respect in, the GOP and the LP, as evident by the CPAC poll. I mean, maybe he just kind of sucks at his reelection strategy, or like, furthering his career in politics, because I mean, I don't know. That's really the only explanation I can think of for why he seems to kind of pander to the Republicans a lot. And like I'm one of the people who voted for Trump and consider myself a libertarian. So it's like, I don't know, maybe his messaging spoke to me, but I'm also in a very small sect of the right, who I'm not a Republican, but voted for Trump, but I do have a lot of like liberty values. Like, maybe that's just like not popular, but it was definitely effective messaging for me,
Yeah. So he's not as bad as Bernie Sanders because he actually votes his conscience. So like, Bernie's worse. Bernie's a sellout, and Bernie's always been a fucking fake. Like, I mean, people thought he used to be good. He's never been good. Like, he's always voted for.
Oh my God. Our first comment, Bernie was against open borders. Okay, thank you for that. I have no idea what Bernie's opinion on immigration was, to be honest. I really didn't give a fuck about him because I knew he wasn't going to win the nomination. So I was like,
he sucks, but he's always sucked. And, Rand is better than him because he actually votes principled. So like, I mean, if Rand Paul somehow won the GOP nomination and he was up against Kamala Harris and the Libertarian Party was a joke, yeah, I would vote for Rand Paul. I don't look at him as an inspirational leader for the message anymore. Like, because so much of getting a liberty message to win is advertising it. And he's proven that he can't do that. Like, he cannot eloquently push the message anymore because he's sullied it so much and he's compromised it so much. He just can't do it. Like, he can't run on ending abuse. Like, he can't run on the fact that Trump and Biden and Obama and Bush were like massive spenders. He's got to always apologize for Trump now, like, no matter what he does, because he's sold his soul there. Like, he can't get around it. So I don't think he can be the messenger for liberty going forward. If I'm proven wrong and he does run in the GOP and he wins, like, yeah, I'll vote for him because I think he'd be a better president. But I don't think we can get a libertarian president in 4 years or 8 years. You said
2028, right?
Maybe 2028. I think more like 2012 or 2032. 2032.
Whichever year I will be 35 is the year that y'all will get your libertarian president. It's going to be, fuck, I can't do math. I was born 2001. 2030. 2036.
So yeah, the election after, maybe.
Okay. Well, I'm your saving grace. I'm just warning y'all now. Y'all better be nice to me.
Yeah, but I think like the purpose of someone running for the next election should just be to bring attention to the ideas, to like wake people up and get people to think differently, which is what Ron Paul did. Rand Paul just like hasn't really done that, I don't think. So, I mean, he has for some people, I guess, but we need someone who's going to be like, who's not going to apologize for Biden or Obama or Trump, who's just going to say like, look, this is libertarianism. This is what we stand for. And it doesn't need to be like a 100% strict ideological litmus test, but it just needs to be centered around liberty and say like, look, this is who we are. We're not GOP light. We're not Democrat light. We're libertarians. And
we're not Republicans who smoke weed. Fuck that. I hate that shit.
Democrats who like guns.
Yeah. I actually haven't heard that one as much. I hear Republicans who smoke weed all the time. I'm like, okay, that may be true for me, but it's not true for everybody else. So
yeah,
whatever. What was I going to say? Oh yeah. So when you're talking about somebody who is kind of like more unapologetic, do you see that in Massey?
He's better. Yeah, definitely. He's
not 100% though. Like who is the best in your opinion?
I don't know. Like I don't really have a perfect idea. Like I like Justin Amash, but I completely understand why Republicans hate him, and he's not inspirational. Like that's the problem.
I used to kind of hate him, and then that was when I was definitely like more like Republican light. And then over the past year, I've realized that like I feel like I kind of hated him because he's just kind of like snobby. I don't know if he comes across that way to anyone else, but I feel like he's kind of like self-righteous a little bit. But I can put my issues with like maybe his like like I don't even like watch a lot of their shit. Like that's just how he comes across on Twitter mainly. So I'm like I can probably like look past that at his like actual ideas. I do agree with him on most shit. So I'm like, okay, I'm not mad at him anymore. But yeah, for a while I was like I don't know. I was definitely in the crowd that was like, Justin Amash is a rhino. And then I was like, wait, I'm not even a fucking Republican. Like, why do I give a fuck? Like, I don't know. I was just stupid.
If he is gonna do it, like he's gotta have some messaging adjustments. Like I think he's probably the most likely person because he's become a member of the Libertarian Party. He's a former congressman. I did watch his like recent show he did with Michael Malice, and he seems kind of like a doomer. Like I don't know. That made me wonder if he's gonna run. Like
he's like black. Wait, is Justin Amash black-pilled? That's so funny.
Yeah, he's been. I don't know if he's actually gonna do it anymore. Like after watching that, so I'm open-minded. Like anyone who steps forward who can actually carry the message, I'll be right. I just really don't think it's gonna be Rand Paul. If I could be proven wrong on that, like if he makes a 180 somehow and really starts driving home the liberty message, he stops like back in the blue with all his rhetoric and how great the GOP is and how communist the Democrats are when they're really just both corporatists. You know, I mean, he's got to, if it's going to be him, he's got to start changing his messaging fast. But I think maybe Justin Amash, maybe Dave Smith, you know, he's talking about it. That'd be interesting.
Is he really?
He is. That'd be interesting. So I
have to get more familiar with this stuff. I literally just followed him. Like I don't know. I'm like the last person on Liberty Twitter to like actually like know who he is, but like I'm really not familiar, so I have to look into it more. But yeah, he seems cool from what I've seen.
Spike Cohen maybe.
I love Spike.
Yeah, like if he did it, that would be cool.
He's such a mean lord, though. Like he'd get in trouble.
I mean, that's the point where I realized we're not going to win in 2024. Like a few months ago, I was still like in the vein of like, oh yeah, we could win, and it's just like, no, there's no way. I mean, people are too dumb. People are too brainwashed. It's like really the stimulus bill that passed before Christmas, and then the Capitol riot, and like seeing how everyone reacted to that, and like how just dumb everyone is, and it's just been like, nah, there's no way. So at this point, it's really just about like who can bring the message, who can inspire people to think outside the box. So like, you know, Spike Cohen, I really like Spike Cohen. If he steps up to the plate and he can do it, that's cool. If Justin Amash can do it, that's cool. Dave Smith, that's cool. You know, I don't know. And Rand Paul, if he could do it somehow, okay, but I've just lost a lot of faith, so I'm just not holding out for him. So,
dude, Spike is like the one person on Twitter I'm like so scared of because I feel like I'll like post like one bad thing and he'll just be like, I've had enough and unfollow me. I have no idea why he followed me in the first place. I was like, what is it? I don't know. I like never interacted with him. He followed me one day. I was like, oh, that's like really cool. But then ever since then, it's always in the back of my head. I'm like, which one's gonna be the post? Which ones are gonna be? Massey too. I feel like I don't know if Massey's on Twitter as much as Spike is, because Spike's always like on there like posting memes and like Massey has like a job and shit. But like every time I post, I'm like, oh my god, this is gonna be the one. Spike's gonna follow me. I don't want that to happen. I'm really scared of it, actually. Also, before we wrap up, I wanted to say last week, or fuck, I keep saying that. A couple days ago, when I was talking to Elaine before we went on live, I mentioned I was gonna have you on this Sunday, and I was like, I'm scared of Reed. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna talk to him about. Like, he literally intimidates the fuck out of me. I want to tell you why, because you come across completely different, like face to face. And that was before I had watched a lot of your videos. Like on Twitter, you're literally just dragging people. So I was like, oh my god, like he's gonna drag the fuck out of me. Like I don't know. And then I started watching your videos, and then your fucking intro to your show scared the shit out of me. You're just like shooting guns, like going crazy and shit. I was like, oh my god, like he's insane. But you're okay. You're not that insane.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad I'm not that insane, at least.
You scared the shit out of me. I was like, when people were like tagging you under my post, where I was like, who should I interview next? I was like, I hope no one posts fucking Reed, and then they did. So I was like, oh, no, I have to. But it's okay.
That's great. I'm glad I intimidate people. That makes me feel good. So
what the fuck? Okay, so I know if I ask for people to ask questions, someone's gonna say shit, because I don't know. There's literally been like a consistent amount of like 10 to 12 people in here the whole time, and no one wanted to say shit. So I hope y'all enjoyed the conversation. Next time, ask more questions. But Reed, do you have anything to leave us with? Any final statements, final thoughts?
yeah, sure. Well, thank you for having me on. I'll have to have you on. I'll have to have you on my show sometime. We'll have to set that up. And anyone who wants to, if you liked anything I said, or if you hated anything I said, or if you think I'm interesting at all, just follow me on YouTube. I'm kind of already getting shadow banned on YouTube, even though I've only got just over 3,000 subscribers. They're coming after me because of the people I've had on. So I could use any subscribers. I'm the Naturalist Capitalist on YouTube. If you want to go watch my videos, like them, comment on them, share them, just to keep the algorithms on my side. And follow me on Twitter. I'm at Reed Coverdale. And then I'm also on Facebook as the Naturalist Capitalist. So go check me out there and you'll see my stuff.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much, Reed, for coming on. Next week, we have David Fight. I think, what's his at? Like Fight for Liberty or some shit like that. Yeah, we have.
He's at David Fight and at Fight for Liberty. He's got 2 accounts. Okay. So.
Cool. So we're having David Fight on next week. That'll be interesting. And I will see you guys later.